Hey, Steeler Nation. This is G.Stryker, host of the SteelerNation.com podcast and now SteelerNation.com vidcast. And today I am happy to have one of our newest sports writers from SteelerNation.com, Jordan DeFigio. How you doing, Jordan?
Hey, I am good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's great to have you on the show. And honestly, thank you for bearing with all the technical difficulties. This was supposed to be a live vidcast. Obviously, as our YouTube subscribers now realize, it didn't go live at 11. We had some technical difficulties, but we'll be working those out, and we should have the vidcast back up and rolling live very shortly. So first of all, I want Steeler Nation to get to know you. You're one of our newest writers. So tell Steeler Nation where you're from.
Sure. I am from the great city of Pittsburgh. I lived here for the majority of my life. I moved away for several years, but came back, and I just love it here. So many good things. Obviously, I'm very invested in the Pittsburgh sports scene, so that played a big part in me coming back to the city. But yeah, from here, lived here for a pretty long time, and it's just the best city.
Awesome. And tell Steeler Nation how you became part of the Steeler Nation writing staff. I mean, this is an interesting story.
It sure is. It was kind of a whirlwind of events, one after another. So I had been following the Steeler Nation Twitter account for a bit now, and you guys do a ton of giveaways on the Twitter account, and now kind of moving over to Instagram as well. But they did a specific giveaway for a Minkah Fitzpatrick jersey. So I won that giveaway. And so
Awesome.
I had already been kind of DMing with Justin on Twitter, and then saw that they were looking for writers too. And I have a huge passion for writing and for telling stories, and just for sharing my love of sports as well as other things with people. So I just reached out again and said I would love to be considered. I don't know what the qualifications you're looking for are, but whatever that is, just let me know so I can potentially get on board here. And then it all kind of came together, and here we are.
And that's kind of the way it works with Steeler Nation, which is great because a lot of us are, have some backgrounds in either broadcasting. I had a broadcast degree earlier in my career after I finished college. And we just kind of get together on Steeler Nation on the forum pages, let people know what we can do. Justin also came to me when I used to write articles just for forum discussions. And then he's like, hey, why don't you write some articles for the page? And I'm like, hell yeah. Let's go from there. And then it's like, hey, can you help out with the podcast? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I have a degree in radio and broadcasting, so I at least understand the technical aspect of it. So,
right.
and that's blossomed from there. So now we're trying to work out this vidcast thing as well. And I love the audio visual, so it's getting my, TV aspect from broadcast school integrated. So now I'm trying to figure that stuff out.
Love it. It's great stuff.
But it's always fun to do new things with Steeler Nation and also show our passion, because that's why we do this, because we love the Steelers, and it gives us a nice outlet to be able to show people not only that we love them, but the kind of passion project articles that we enjoy writing for ourselves that we would find interesting as readers. That, for me, I try to write a lot of articles that don't really fit on other web pages because I would do a lot of commentary. And it's like you do it that way. And, I have you on. Okay, for some reason this is stating as mute. Hopefully everything was rolling so far to this point.
Yeah, my dog was starting to get a little vocal, cool. I muted the feed over here so that she wouldn't, be.
With all my technical difficulties today, I was just freaking out there for a second.
Technology is it's so touchy, and it can just change and be all over the map. So I get it. It can be a frustrating thing to have to deal with.
Yeah. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about with Steeler Nation is one of your articles that we just looked into. You were talking about Diontae Johnson, and you wrote an article yesterday specifically on him and his coming back from his groin injury. And tell Steeler Nation what you discovered when you researched the article and what he had to say.
Yeah, so we already knew that Diontae Johnson had sports hernia surgery, And that was back in February. I want to say that he had the surgery to repair that injury. And what none of us really knew until yesterday when he had this Zoom call with Missy Matthews was that he sustained that injury in week 2 of the season, and that he had been dealing with injuries from training camp.
Yeah.
For like
super interesting.
Yeah, he was playing injured for basically the whole season. And what has been standing out to everybody is the numbers that he put up in his rookie season, first of all, playing injured with second and third string quarterbacks. And yeah, you can see it on the screen right now, the way that he's able to create separation, his speed, even his hands. Like he just has that receiving ability that is pretty rare, where he can make seemingly impossible catches look just so natural for him.
And that's a really interesting thing, because if you see right here in his break, he's a quick twitch receiver. One of the things I loved about him coming out of college was he was the best receiver I've ever reviewed on getting off of press at the line of scrimmage. And you really need a lot of quick lateral movements, and that's heavy, heavy, heavy work on the groin. And for us too, I know I'm a super Steeler nerd geek, and I keep track of injuries, and I'm super geeky like that. So when I first researched and he tracked his injury, he initially hurt his groin back in early August and missed about 10 days of practice. Also held him out of one of the preseason games as well. They held him out at first one for a different reason than the third preseason game as well, which I think was groin related. I think he probably started working his way back. He's young, he's strong, probably then retweaked it seriously in that week 2 game that he was discussing. But I mean, look, these are the games that I'm showing. That Buffalo game, that's after week 2. Where he's making these moves. Who's he playing here? Is this Texans? We played Texans last year. I can't remember if we played Texans last year. That's it.
Yeah, last season was a blur. Man.
I know.
It was such a blur.
There's San Francisco. That's an early game, but that would have been week 3, I think. Didn't we? Like, I can't remember.
It was week 3. That was the week that Minka came over from the Dolphins.
Yep.
The Chiefs game, the Rams game too.
Yeah. So I think the Chiefs might have been the preseason Chiefs game. I'm not positive for which don't run that. The Jets definitely last game of the season. I mean, he looks great. He does not look like a guy that's about ready to go under the knife. And
no, he doesn't.
And as a rookie, he still led the Steelers in receptions, and he still got named as an All-Pro, as a second-team All-Pro for being a punt returner. He returned a big touchdown for us, and he needed that lateral quick movement as well for those. So I've hurt my groin before as a hockey goalie, and I know for a fact that it is not fun to do any lateral movement whatsoever with a tweaked groin. And for him to be able to do that and get that groin surgery and sports hernia surgery, that is just insane, because the sports hernia is actually in the front lower abdomen, as opposed to most hernia surgeries being in different places, which is crazy for him to be able to still perform at that high level, make the All-Pro team, and I just had surgery, but still, your article was fantastic too, Jordan. Great to hear that he's working his way back from that.
Right, absolutely.
And what did he state? Did he say he was working out with anybody from that video?
He, from what I recall, he said he's been talking with Ben, building a relationship with Ben, kind of trying to get that chemistry and connection in place, which is going to be important. But I think one of Ben's biggest strengths as a quarterback is being able to develop that kind of quarterback receiver chemistry with whoever's on the field. Like even with Ryan Switzer, he makes him a better receiver than anybody else could. Like, so I think that the fact that he's in communication with Ben and he really wants that to be a priority will further solidify that kind of bond that they'll create on the field, throwing passes, catching, all that stuff.
And to further reiterate your position on Ryan Switzer, and there's big news for Ryan Switzer because the Switz Army Knife now has a new role, and that is as new daddy to son Christian. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful baby boy. So congratulations to Ryan Switzer, who just had his baby boy yesterday.
Wow. Yeah. Congratulations, Switz. That is so exciting, and just a beautiful baby. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I know. And
so precious.
A beautiful family as well. Yeah. I mean, they are they are very, very gifted with this new family. Now he's got to learn how to sleep again, or not sleep, because it looks like they're posing as that we're not going to sleep forever picture. Yeah. New parents love to pose, and congratulations to Gabby. I know she had to do an excellent job as well. I'm glad she's happy, healthy, and that they're moving on with their new family.
Yeah, they're looking great. That is so exciting. Good for them.
Yeah. And also we had some information from James Conner just released on his page as well. And I will pick that one up now. So right here, directly from his page, thank you, God, 4 years cancer-free. Having cancer doesn't define you. Your mindset does. Keep fighting. Keep positive. Saying a prayer for those who are still fighting during these times. It started with hope. Awesome message from James Conner, and especially for a lot of us here at Steeler Nation with big ties to religion and Christianity. And that's a big, impactful statement. And so he's always been such, you should know, and you can even speak on him more because he is Pittsburgh. And tell me what it is to define James Conner as being a Pittsburgh to you.
I'll tell you. So I mentioned that I lived outside of Pittsburgh for several years. I lived in Nashville for about 4 years. But anytime I crossed paths with somebody who was from Pittsburgh, I could just tell immediately there's something different about Pittsburgh pride than there is for any other city. And when you have a connection to the city, especially when you're born here, you're raised here, you're shaped by the city, you don't really want to leave. And he has, obviously, with the fight through cancer and even just getting to the NFL level, he has the Pittsburgh grit that you see, that kind of blue collar, down and dirty type mentality, where even when he got into the league, he was saying, I don't want to be defined as a cancer survivor. I don't want that to be what my career is about. I want it to be that I was a good running back and I put in the work and I made big plays for my team. And I just think that he understands and appreciates what the city of Pittsburgh comes down to at its core. And he knows how hard it would be to leave that, even though there's a pretty high likelihood that he won't be here after next season. A lot of stars would have to align for him to sign another contract here, but he wants to stay. And that's just because Pittsburgh pride is unlike anything else.
And it's big too because he's been in the Pittsburgh area his entire life, growing up in the Erie area from high school, coming just straight down, was that 79 to get to Pittsburgh for college, to go to Pitt. So he's his only college and pro stadium he's known is Heinz Field. So that is an amazing aspect of a player like that, because the Steelers usually always pass on the Pitt players, and there's so many fantastic Pitt players that have come out. I mean, when I at least remember when Timmons was picked the year that we got Lawrence Timmons, which was Tomlin's first year as head coach. The pick right before was Darrelle Revis, which I thought was also a target for this team, because our team always needs a quarterback, a cornerback. Yeah. And that was the best corner I'd seen up close to playing at Pitt. And he, of course, Hall of Fame talent. So it might have been interesting if the Jets didn't move up ahead of us to grab him.
Right.
If they're both on the board, would Tomlin have taken Revis over Timmons, but that's moot. That's just something those fans like to argue about. But it's still awesome to see a Pittsburgh guy that Pittsburgh embraces, and that story also of conquering cancer while he's at Pitt. To not only productive before the cancer. That 1 year took him off, and he came back, and he's even more productive when he returned. Right. So Pittsburgh loves a guy like that. I remember when he was drafted, he was the #1 selling Steelers jersey just because of that story, because he was one of Pittsburgh's own. And it was, I love that he's still sharing these great messages. He still goes out and visits hospitals to help them and tell them, keep on the path and keep believing. And he's just, Steeler fans love players like that. That just really embrace the city, positive attitude. And, you alluded as well, it's going to be difficult to bring him back next year. I'm hoping the salary cap really jumps next year so they have ways of picking people up. I don't know how the heck the Dallas Cowboys can afford Zeke and their receiver, and now Dak.
With what Dak is asking for, it seems impossible.
But that's if they can figure out a way to do that, to pay 3 offensive players top 3 contracts in 3 positions, we should be able to find a way to make at least give Juju a good contract to his style, and hopefully Connor as well, because it would suck to lose that core of that draft that we helped create with that draft year, because that was such an excellent draft. And
that was 2017, right?
Yes, I believe.
Okay.
17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
20, so it would be 4 years. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And the first rounder in 2017, that was
TJ.
Yeah. So and that's why we picked up the 5-year option on TJ. And
Which
the
was
only
a great
reason,
call.
and it's the only reason why we don't have to worry about renegotiating a contract next year is because of that 5-year option. But the problem is, if the Steelers want to retain him after there, you're talking about franchise tagging. You're talking about paying him, which if he's still on course and one of these next 2 years becomes Defensive Player of the Year, he's going to be one of the highest paid defensive players ever. So it'll be really.
And he should have been Defensive Player of the Year last year.
I agree.
But
the only thing that worked against him, I think, too, was the fact that the Steelers didn't make the playoffs. If the Steelers would have made the playoffs, because that's just the way that voters vote. Well, you can't be an MVP of a team or a Defensive Player of the Year if your team doesn't make the playoffs. That's just, the way writers think. But he was definitely the most disruptive player on defense, consistently game in and game out over all the other ones. I mean, there's games where that cornerback in the Patriots disappeared, and that's probably when they stopped taping teams after the Bengals problem. But we still haven't heard back from Goodell. We haven't forgotten. Raj, we haven't forgotten.
We will never forget. When it comes to New England and scandals, we do not forget.
Oh, man. So, going back on topic a little bit, and I wanted to also touch base on another interesting article that came up from Virginia, and let me grab this right here on the screenshot. And this was the Virginia Pilot. They posted photos of Ryan Shazier's house in Fox Chapel, PA, which is now for sale. And a beautiful home. It's just under $3 million, $2.95 million for sale.
Oh, not bad.
It's it is a beautiful home. I mean, I love living there. I mean, it's definitely above my means currently with my salary here at steelcase.com. But
just a little bit.
But the one thing that I have to ask, at least question-wise, is, does this mean that Shazier is downsizing, or does it mean that he's thinking about leaving the Pittsburgh area or Pennsylvania area in general?
Yeah, that was my first question. So my mom was actually the one who showed me the pictures of his house yesterday. And she said Shazier put his house on the market. And before I even saw the house itself, I asked, is he leaving? Is he moving somewhere? Because, it's one of two things. He's either getting something a little bit more manageable, or he's planning on going out of state or city or somewhere,
And that was something that I was trying to determine as well. But obviously he is under contract this year with the Steelers, obviously playing on a reduced rate. With these reduced contracts over the past couple years, I'm starting to think maybe he's downsizing and going to stay in the Pittsburgh area, hopefully as well. But I know he does have endorsements. He does speaking. He does get paid for those engagements. But obviously it doesn't pay as well as a top-tier all-pro middle linebacker.
Yeah. And it just wouldn't make sense for him to want to leave, The Steelers have taken such good care of him to ensure that he had a salary and even something as simple as health benefits to be on the payroll and a part of the organization post injury, post his playing career,
Yeah, it's just something that we have to think about. But we all love Shazier. Many wishes to his health and his family. And if he ever came back, it would be a miracle, and it would be something that Steeler fans would just be absolutely over the moon with, should it ever occur. And one other aspect I wanted to discuss, I had a lot of questions from Steeler Nation, both on Twitter, Instagram, and some on the forum as well. And I saw that you joined the forum as well. What's your forum name?
Fidge Newton. I kept it consistent across all those platforms, because honestly, just for my own sake, I forget. If I start to change things up, I just don't ever remember what my login information is. So I just keep it the same.
Nice. And I post this Cope, and it's a blast. Like, the football forum there is just amazing. A lot of knowledge. I get a lot of insight and think about things differently, so I can write more interesting articles, just bouncing ideas off of each other. And it's just a blast. They're great people too. So guys, come over to the SteelerNation.com site, click on the forum, join us. It's a blast. It's a lot of fun. A lot of people passionate about the Steelers and football in general. And we generally get the news immediately, even before some of these news sources that are writing the articles, because our people just immediately shoot over their Twitter stuff and shoot over their Instagram stuff. And we're in the know pretty quickly over there.
Yeah, it's a cool experience. I just joined a couple days ago, so I don't have that much time spent on it. But even just the couple days that I've been there, it's a lot of good conversation, a lot of really in-depth football knowledge from people who have been watching the Steelers for decades. So it's good for me, who a little bit younger, to even just learn more about the history of the team I grew up watching.
And going back then to that thing that people were asking me, at least when I broke down the Steelers video, that's on our YouTube channel. Come over to the Steeler Nation channel on YouTube, and you can see my breakdown. But I'm going to quickly go through it with you right now, just so we can kind of see what I was looking, so I was able to see how far Ben threw the football. So I know he's on a high school field. We'll check. I mean, it comes up later, but you see an X right here on the field that I'm pointing to. That is the 40-yard line, because you kick off from the 40-yard line in college. So Ben's around midfield, and I'll advance here because these are all quick cuts.
Yeah.
Really quick. Oh, like that one went so quickly, it's gone. There you can see the X on the field. He's in right around midfield, though, from what I'm seeing for this. And then this one, he's standing. There's the
yeah, you can see it.
You see the midfield logo right here. You can see the X at the 40. That's 40, 45. He's right on the 50, it looks like to me, between the 45 and the 50 on the other side of the field. But usually quarterbacks like to line up behind a line, so I think that he's lining up behind the 50 there. But he's winging it. Like, he's really winging it hard. And this one shows it really well. I was able to count up as soon as Juju gets out of the picture. You see the yard markers. You see he's in the end zone.
He's in the end zone.
Yep. The hash lines end. If you can see right here to the right of our text boxes, that's Big Ben. That's his black shirt, his white logo, the white Nike logo.
Yep.
Gray pants, black shoes. That's Ben. So I know exactly where Ben is on the field. I know exactly where Juju is on the field. You know he's in the end zone because the hash lines stop. This is Switzer. So when we move on a little bit, we'll see Switzer. But we can count back because it goes 10, 20, 30, 40. Then you see Ben, and then you see the 50-yard line, which is right behind where our things are. I think probably they can see it a little better because I think it only shows one of us at a time on the replay. But I can tell that he's between the 45 and the 50. This pass is to the center of the field. And so it had to be in the air about 45, 50 yards. And that is as good as saying the guy has his arm back. And he's not being held back. And he's able to throw it as hard and as far as he wants.
Which is so encouraging for everybody watching the Steelers and paying attention to them because of the types of throws that we witnessed last year. And even just the overall quarterback awareness. When you're in your first or second season, you don't have that experience under your belt like Ben, who's a veteran, to have that field vision. They just were completely missing guys who were wide open and trying to force passes and didn't quite have the strength. They didn't quite have the speed on the ball to get it to like thread defenders. So yeah, it's very exciting to see him back in action, even if it's just quick, like 1 second shots. Yeah, go ahead.
And you hit the nail on the head, Jordan, because it's experience. I mean, we had two quarterbacks last year playing backup for the Steelers that had a combined 0 games starting entering the season. So they had to learn as they went last season. Both surprisingly were quite successful. Rudolph ended up 5-3 with his record. I know Duck was 3-3. So to get positive exchanges, to get wins as a rookie quarterback is really, really difficult. And especially to be as young and Duck being undrafted as well. But they showed some good promise in preseason. They obviously performed better than Dobbs, which made Dobbs trade bait. And he became part of the trade.
Jaguars, right?
Yes. He went to the Jaguars for a 5th round draft pick. And that 5th rounder was part of the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. So that was part of the package deal. So the Steelers are doing what a lot of teams in the NFL do. Like I know the Eagles do this. I know the Patriots do this. And that is develop young quarterbacks, work them up through the system. And if you're not going to start them, don't give them a second contract and trade them for draft capital. And
which is worth it because even looking back to last year's draft, we used the draft picks that we had via the Antonio Brown trade to then trade up in the draft and grab Devin Bush. So people always view a player for a draft pick, not always, but they tend to view that kind of swap as meaningless. But in reality, if you're a good GM and you know how to kind of manipulate those trades, you can get a lot with your draft picks or trade them away for a player like Minkah Fitzpatrick.
That is true. That is true. And here, going back to Ben, we see again he's standing at midfield easily. Line right there is the 40-yard line, so that's the 45, and this is the 50. He's standing on the 50 here. You can easily see that one. And then we got a quick cut. There is Switzer coming in with a beautiful hands catch. Here's the 20-yard line, and the 20-yard line, so he's right around the 16, 15, because he's outside of the hash lines. I can see both sets of hash lines. So Ben's probably in the center of the field, throwing to the outside, so it looks like it's about a 35-yard pass in the air. And
that was a bullet. Yeah,
it came in quick. But that's great notice on that. Then we have right here on the sideline, James Conner coming in with a nice catch. And I've seen from looking back, and I can click back a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. But this line right here with the little blue on it, that's the 30-yard line. We can see it behind Ben's head in those shots, and I counted back from the 40 to get that 30. And so I know he's catching the ball right here around the 25, 24, 23-yard line area. So he's at the sideline. Ben's probably in the middle of the field. So this is probably closer to being like a 30-yard pass down to him. But, I mean, here we go. We're talking about 30-yard passes, 40-yard passes, 50-yard passes. I mean, Ben's arm is back. And that was the most important thing that I wanted to show Steeler Nation, how you get the size, how you get to know exactly how far he was able to throw the football. And clear as day. So that's why he ended up sitting back in the chair, and we can start talking about that now, which is barbershop gate, which ended up, it's unfortunately, Big Ben has a black cloud over every damn thing he does. And he released this, beautifully produced video setting a whole story the entire way through. I'm not going to, you can tell he was injured right when he first said, I'm not going to shave my beard. I'm not going to cut my hair until I can throw a legit NFL pass. They show him on the field, quick cut. He's got the ball. He's still got that big, bushy, Kiesel-esque beard on the field. And then they click to him, and he's like, oh, he's going to throw it. And then he throws the ball, and then you see him throwing bombs. I mean, he's whizzing these balls, and he's like really tearing into the ball too, like baseball-style throws. So for him to – and then – of course, like the imagery of him getting a haircut is not like, look at what I'm doing in COVID-19 time.
Yeah.
It's the actuality of, this is my journey. I stated at the beginning of my journey before surgery that I'm not going to get my haircut. And he is just an absolute joy now with the fact that he's getting his haircut. So let me bring this back up right now, too, if I can bring up. There he is sitting in the chair.
Oh, look at that face.
And I know, it's pure joy. I mean, he's obviously trimmed like 3/4 of a Kiesel off of that beard. He's got his hair nice and trim. Initially, I thought there were 4 people total here, and I missaw it. So now here's a little bit of an exclusive to see how many people are in the room, because we see the barber here, bald barber. He's been interviewed on all sorts of things, Fox News, CNN, just because of like, wow, can you have your shop open?
Right.
And his shop was not open to the public, people. He's one of Ben's friends. And I stated that initially, it's like, this guy definitely owns a barber shop, because you're in a barber shop.
Right.
And he can't be open to the public, obviously. So people just got upset that Ben got a haircut, whereas they couldn't get a haircut, but Ben knows this guy personally.
Yeah.
In exchange of money. So it's a free haircut. It's more like promotional. I mean, obviously his shop's going to be blowing up now, since people know it. For some reason, it's slipping my mind. And if you recall, you can add in, but
I can't remember.
But please go see his shop and get your haircut there. You should be a line out the door when the first day to get your haircut happens, because this guy made sure that Ben's story could be complete and in beautiful fashion. So here also, obviously in the mirror here, we can see Big Ben's back of his head. And then we have the cameraman right here. He's holding the camera. You can see the microphone and the camera here. I believe that he said that this was the second cameraman, because they had 2 cameramen on the field, one person next to Ben, one person downfield on the receivers, it seemed like, when they were doing the workout. And then what I didn't notice the last time, and now I'm noticing, is this hand. This hand is another person.
Yep.
Because the person right here is filming the shot that we're looking at right now. The person in the green with the red hair is definitely taking the shot. So I didn't know if this was possibly James Conner, possibly another friend. It's definitely somebody Ben knows well, because he's acting in a very kind way for somebody that knows. So the nails aren't beautiful enough, and the hand isn't beautiful enough to be his wife, so I don't think it's his wife. But it might be James Conner messing with them and having a good time with them. Then you're getting your hair cut, touching the hair. So that sets Ben off, and he's having a good time and has a nice smile for it. And then, of course, Juju and Switzer looking swole, walking across the field saying, Ben is back. And that is just, nothing is more exciting for a Steeler fan that just lost a year out of Big Ben to come back this year now and see Big Ben compete.
Right. So I looked it up. It's Norman's Cutting Edge Barbershop. Awesome. So
Norman's Cutting Edge. Steeler Nation, Norman's Cutting Edge. That is the only place you should cut your hair when you come out of quarantine. Telling you. Exactly. He is the guy. Especially with all the crap he had to take from people that didn't understand that he wasn't open for business.
And to just kind of reiterate that point, I don't understand why Ben is always at the center of these national sports media concocted scandals. He's always being scrutinized for anything that he does. And take a look at Tom Brady, who accidentally walked into somebody else's house in Tampa, and everybody,
Accidentally.
yeah,
Who
and
happened to be
everybody was like,
a coach.
yeah,
And
they were like,
against the
oh, that's so
rules.
cute. Look at him. He got confused and went into somebody else's house. But if it happened to Ben, then everybody would be losing their minds, because they'd be like, he's breaking and entering. Why does he have to go into somebody else's house? But Ben just can't catch a break.
Yeah.
But you're right. The big takeaway from that is that he is back, and he looks like he is ready to go this season. And that isn't big news just because we're getting our Hall of Fame quarterback back under center, but we're in the twilight of his career at this point. And to have a lost year of not being able to watch him play when we know what kind of quarterback he is, that was a huge loss, because we know we don't have that many years with him left, especially now that the first quarterback of that draft class, Eli Manning, has retired. So that has started, and Phillip Rivers is not with the Chargers anymore. He's with the Colts. So like, things are shifting with that generation of quarterbacks, and we'll probably see some change with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers after they drafted Jordan Love. So it's getting to that point where a new generation of quarterbacks are taking over the league, like Mahomes and Jackson. And it was a big deal to not be able to watch Ben, because it's like, oh my goodness, he's not going to be playing forever. And we knew that, but now we can feel it. And it's kind of that sense of urgency, like, let's get him back ASAP.
And the only benefit that happened, the only, positive that I can spin off of the Big Ben injury was the reason that Miami decided to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, because their GM thought they would get the best draft capital trading Minkah to a team that doesn't have their franchise quarterback. And I understand the reasoning, but fortunately, Tomlin and the coaches did an excellent job last year with multiple injuries going down. I mean, you're talking about Juju missed 4 games, Connor missed 5 games, Switzer 7, Tuitt missed 10 games, Snell and Samuels missed 3. I mean, we had injuries all over the field last year, and it was just for them to maintain and get to a point where, I thought they were going to make the playoffs when they were 8-5, but they ended up being 8-8. But the benefit of being 8-8 was Dolphins were drafted 17th and not in the top 10 like they were expecting to.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why people were so critical initially of the trade for Fitzpatrick, because as soon as Ben went down, everybody had this assumption that, I don't even know, it was so unfounded, but it felt like people thought that we were going to somehow be worse than the Bengals and get the first overall pick and be able to draft Joe Burrow to be Ben's heir. It was so confusing. It was such a confusing time to be a Steelers fan, but yeah, it ended up working out in our favor completely, because we got Minkah and we still went 500. And looking at the new playoff format, we would have made the playoffs last year. So It was shocking that we won as many games as we did with the kind of play that we had, and the injuries too.
It's a testament to the team. Next man up is always the mantra with a Tomlin-led team. That's one of his favorite Tomlinisms. So, you're a starter in waiting, next man up. So that's a belief that the backups have, and they prepare and they're ready when they get in there. So I know it became a talent issue for a lot of the games down the road, and pushing the box and blitzing every play and not respecting our run game and just throwing everything at the quarterbacks, and made it very difficult in the cold weather for us to get our offense off the ground at all. And but it's what happened last year. But I wanted to touch base also, Jordan, on one of your articles that you touched on one, and CJ Lester did as well. and they were about the Steelers snubs, and some of them were referring to Minka and Ben not being top 100 players. So tell Steeler Nation what you found out about those.
So this is an opinion I've always kind of had, and I tend to be very opinionated and get worked up.
That makes for a good writer.
Yeah. But I think it's my belief that those player rankings are just pointless. They're absolutely worthless, because ultimately, if you're playing in the NFL, with the exception of a few guys who would prefer to have blockbuster deals, everybody wants to win the Super Bowl. That's the ultimate prize. So if you're asking me who is the best whatever, who's in the top 100, I would say, who won the Super Bowl last year? I don't care about players. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So who's the best team? The Chiefs. They're the guys to beat. Like, it doesn't, and one of the things that I say or bring up in the article is that age-old comparison of Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu. Like, you can line two players' stats up next to each other and dissect them line by line, like how many interceptions, how many sacks, how many forced fumbles, in how many games played. And obviously there are going to be tilted scales in one way or another, but what ends up being more important for a player's career is what they mean to their team and their ability to make big plays and big moments. And that doesn't always look like an interception or a forced fumble. Like, it even comes to mind the game against the Colts in the 2005 playoffs, where Jerome Bettis fumbled on the goal line, and who made the shoestring tackle that saved the game? Big Ben. Like, it does not always matter who has more what. What does matter is who steps up in the right time. And if we're going based off of rankings, I don't know how you can keep a player like Minka Fitzpatrick, first team All-Pro, off of that list.
Yeah, because just number wise, I mean, you just do the math for how many people make the All-Pro team, and you're talking about 40-some players. And that's for first team, like, between 30 and 40-some players, depending on who has back. No, it's actually just starters that they list. They don't even list backups for those. So, yeah, you're looking at, 25, 30 players max in those respects. So to have a top 25 player not in a top 100 for someone's, like, to me, I also think it's like you have your internal biases from your writers that may be tiered toward their local team a little bit more and might have just flat out forgot about Minka Fitzpatrick. And then at the end, he's like, oh, he's not a top 100 player. He's got to, like, play his list because he already dealt his cards. And for me, like, I think he probably just forgot the research, didn't do his research properly, and screwed up on it. Because in any top 100 list, everybody on the first team All-Pro should be in your top 100. A lot of the players from your second team All-Pro should be in your top 100, and then work out from there. And, I can understand also Ben not being on there strictly because he didn't play last year. I mean, we know he's a franchise quarterback. We know he's capable of being a top 100 player. But I can understand, at least from reviewing the players from last year and taking into account all of the quarterback play. I mean, Ben's at the bottom because he only played in 2 games. He had no stats. I mean,
he didn't look great in those 2 games, and he was playing through an elbow injury, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So that's ultimately the problem. They were hoping that elbow would heal on its own. It didn't. It snapped, and fortunately, he'll be coming back stronger this year and doesn't have to worry about that elbow anymore. So that would be ideal.
Oh, let's hope.
I know, but you have all these awesome players, and this is why I'm so excited as a Steeler fan this year, because Ben didn't play last year. Connor, another Pro Bowler, had incredible stats. Previous years had a really down year, like a terrible down year. Same thing with Juju. I mean, he really regressed. I mean, I think there were 3 players above him in yardage and 2 or 3 players above him in receptions as well. I mean, he got double covered, but I mean, he was open as well too at times and didn't get hit. But I mean, you got passionate guys that are Pro Bowl players, Juju as well, and that know that they can perform. And now just hearing this information too about Deontay Johnson, it's like, there's another gear out of this guy.
I know. It's shocking.
He's already sick. And then, getting to it back, and then he's going to want to prove like, hey, guys, I'm not injury prone. I can play a full season. I mean, we're waiting, but yes, I can play a full season. And with him paired with Hayward, the defensive line is so disruptive, and that really opens up the playmaking for the rest of the team, because we're not always relying on those outside pressure edges and blitz schemes to get pressure on the quarterback, because Tuitt and Hayward are doing it all by themselves. And the defense was already so good last year. Look out we get to see those little runs where like Tuitt and Hayward are playing together for like first 2 or 3 games of the season, or like first couple plays of the season, and they can't do anything. They can't even get a play out of the backfield. And then like Tuitt gets hurt. I'm like, crap.
Yeah. And I think Tuitt will, and maybe I'm putting words into his mind, but I feel like he'll probably kind of want to prove something too, because the loss of Javon Hargrave has been a big talking point for a lot of people in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And I think he will probably want to be able to say, I can step in and excel as well. Like, just because I was hurt doesn't mean I'm irrelevant. And like, I'm here, I'm going to make an impact, that kind of thing.
Nice. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and vidcast. Yeah. The vidcast is not live, but it will go up and a little bit slower, but love having you on. Love you being part of the team. You've been a great addition. I'm looking forward to reading more and more of your articles. And Steeler Nation, you should be too. Please follow Jordan DeFigio on Twitter and Instagram at Fidge Newton. That's FIDGENEWTON. And also Fidge Newton on SteelerNation.com forum. They've got a Mia's Cope as well. So come on over and chat with us and have some great discussions. So thanks again, Jordan. Pleasure having you. We look forward to
it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always fun to talk Steelers with a fellow diehard. It's really great.
We have a problem. I know that.
A little bit, but it's a good problem. I like it.
We're having these great instances now, or at least we can get together and talk about our problem together.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like counseling, like group counseling. Yeah. Awesome.
All right, Steeler fans, make sure to come on over to SteelerNation.com for some of the best football information on the internet, as well as that excellent forum that we talked about. Check out also our Steeler Nation podcast, or our Steeler Nation channel on YouTube right here. We've got some great videos. Talked with Ron Lust yesterday, the sports attorney, and he told us so much information about COVID-19 and how these sports are going to reopen. Also have a nice interview here too with Alex Highsmith. Super interesting guy. Come on over to the gear page, go down underneath the jersey, and here is the click link for the official Steeler Nation merchandise, which is awesome. You got shirts, you got hoodies, you got podcasts, Steeler Nation podcast. Heck yeah, that's what I wear. We got mugs, everything, roll over. We got a ton of color options, so you can customize the way you want to be at Steeler Nation Tailgate to properly represent Steeler Nation. And thanks a lot for joining us. You can also tweet us at Steeler Nation, Instagram us at SteelerNation.com. I can also be followed on social media as Steeler Nation Striker at SN Striker with a Y. Thanks for joining us for the SteelerNation.com podcast and live, not so live vidcast. I'm your host, G.Stryker, with Jordan DeFigio, rooting along with you as always. Go Steelers!